Welcome to Pirate Living Podcast. We are your hosts, Karan and Kristen. On this podcast, we are highlighting ordinary people living extraordinary lives. These are pirates who take small, bold actions daily to create social change. Pirate life is all about rebelling and breaking the rules for good. Creating lasting social change starts by first breaking our inner rules. After all, the hardest rules to break are your own. The pirates we highlight have dedicated themselves to creating good trouble.
Today, we are talking with James Owen Roberts. James is the founder and CEO of James Owen Roberts Coaching. He is a performance and success coach and creator of the AIM system. He is the host of the Mindset Athlete podcast, a TEDx speaker, and is an author with over 15 years of experience in exercise, diet, and mindset as a coach. James is also a two-time Paralympic athlete in rowing and volleyball. And yeah, we're looking forward to hearing his story today. So James, we're happy to have you here and be chatting with you.
Kristen and Karan, thanks for having me on the show.
Yeah. Thank you for being here. So yeah, you have quite the story. You've had many adventures in your life, and we'd love for you to tell us about your journey that led you to where you are today.
I'm going to start at the beginning. Both my parents are retired military. So I grew up on a NATO base for almost 2 decades. So the sport was probably a natural progression for me because I'd seen it, lived it, and breathed it day in, day out, as early as I can remember. So for me, I think I've always been one to be stubborn, be rebellious, as you guys will put it. I'll call it. I'll use the more modernistic term, a disruptor, probably since this very young age, because my family, even though I've got a disability, they never treated me any differently. So, because of the pandemic, I actually asked my family how was it like for them with me growing up with a disability, because I was curious. And I learned a lot about what it was like for them 30 odd years ago. My grandmother's no longer, unfortunately, with us. That she was more morbid than I ever imagined, to the fact that she would say, "Oh, how's James going to survive? He's going to be in a wheelchair for the rest of his life." I don't know that person at all in my life. So for me, it was quite of a eye-opening, and it shocked a few people when I first shared it a year or two ago to kind of, I come on live and I'm going to share something personal, and people are in tears in the comments. Like, to me, it was nothing. It still doesn't mean anything to me because she wasn't like that around me growing up. So that adversity that was thrust upon myself, I think be it my mother or my father's side of the family are quite rebellious, don't take things for what face value. I think because my mom and dad grew up in the 60s, it's pretty literally probably says why. But I think because of them being in the military, and my dad being American and being in the US Armed Forces and having the opportunity to experience life outside the US, I think is giving him a different perspective on maybe, say, the typical American that maybe never leaves their city or their state. And I know probably for a fact that he grew up in segregation. Comes from my family come from Kentucky. That's very conservative Republican state. That I think I've been brought up on the values of Martin Luther King's spirit, to literally the epitome of it is, it doesn't matter if you're white, you're yellow, you're brown, you could be polka dot and with purple spots for all that I care. I'm gonna gauge my perspective on and treat you based on your character and how you respect me. So I think as a result of all that, it's probably laid the foundations to be very easily a disruptor, because it's like, well, I'm quite happy. And I've mentioned this with a few clients recently, because they're like, well, I don't want to be the black sheep. Yeah, but what's wrong with it? If you choose to be going into that self-development space, and you're choosing to not follow the herd of following the rules, and you're not following rules because you can see the setbacks or the drawbacks of people literally conforming and going to their own downfall. You're choosing to be unique in the way that, hey, I don't feel discouraged or fault them for choosing that path, but I don't want to go down that one. So I've obviously showcased to clients to kind of go, there's two perspectives to come from this. There's one that obviously the stigma of people being kind of thrust to the outside that nobody wants. Nobody wants to be the outsider when it seems to be hip to be in those social circles. You don't want to be the one that's alienated, because that's to our root core as human beings. We don't want to be on our lonesome. Whereas I think the one that I was showcasing to them, that through choice, that I've obviously through coaching and from my own experiences, I've embraced a little bit more as I've grown older, to kind of go, well, if I want to stand out, I want to be unique, this can look into numerous ways. That could be rebellious, that could be shaking up the status quo, that could be a disruptor. They mean all different things. They're slightly all different in one way or another, but I'm on the periphery because I don't like what the status quo with that is. So I think as a result, probably direct correlation of my upbringing, and through my own education, I've got to where we are today as a result.
I mean, I'd love to hear your path to becoming a Paralympic athlete as well.
That mine's, I won't say unique in the way that it happened. I started in mainstream sport, so I'd done up until that point from the age of 11 until I think I was about 15 or 16 when a chance conversation with one of the coaches was presented to me. What's your thought about doing disability sport? I'm like, I don't know what to say. I'm going to respect and listen to you because that's how I've been brought up. I bring it up from time to time with family, and sometimes deliberately to see how they're going to react. It still annoys my mother 20 years later, that conversation. I don't know if I'd have to speak to that individual personally to see if there was any malice or what the intent of saying such a thing as a result was, but it kind of snowballed as a result of that chance conversation of what's your thoughts about doing it. It's like, well, obviously I knew I was different by that time, that I had my limitations, and I took great pleasure in beating people, especially the parents that had pushy parents, because I'm beating the parents. Because in theory, the other guys my age should be beating me, and it shouldn't be even close. So if they were beating them, it's like, well, there you go. I'm good. I've got an ability, and I must be better than your son. But I took it on board and ran with it to the point that 6 months later, I went down to a disabled program, about 40 minutes down the road when we were living in Belgium, to do a regular training session, regular practice. And I think they believed that I'd be just run-of-the-mill individual that was just here to do sport as or swimming at the time, like a leisurely thing or a hobby. And my mother was poolside with the management, and I did it just like I would do any practice, just to get on and do my business. And then we were talking about it when we came back in the car. It's like, oh, their eyes lit up. It's like almost hit the jackpot. So if I give some context to that, of the better swimmers in that team, 3 of us have all gone on to represent our country in the Paralympics. One in swimming, myself obviously in rowing and sitting volleyball, and the youngest of the lot is obviously Eclipses because he's become a medalist as well, and he's still competing. So probably in their wildest dreams, they probably wouldn't have thought they'd have got that lucky in having those sorts of individuals. So off the back of that, my mum took it upon herself to get in contact with British Swimming. So this is long before Instagram, Facebook, and things like that. That obviously had to go on the internet, find a phone number, and ring somebody up to the the person is now the head of Paralympics GB, so the top person within Paralympic sport in this country. At the time, he was how would they call his job? The head honcho within British swimming on the disabled side. He rang my mother back. Oh, I've seen that you're trying to get hold of. Oh, it was hard to get there. So I think once I'd made the team for the Paralympics, I'd probably overjoyed that I'd realized some of the potential I had in swimming in another sport. So that's where a lot of my resiliency has come from to kind of do it for others, as my mother probably went way and beyond what she had to do to get me into positions to be successful. She was a little bit scared of my grandmother in terms of respect, in terms of not having laid some of them crumbs to, I think we came to Karen, you know obviously this, but we've got the American equivalent is obviously the Commonwealth Games for the Commonwealth countries, and Canada's one of those included. I went as a spectator 2006 as a spectator, and it was as a result of that competition that I got to know the Welsh team, because my mum went out of the way when the competition had finished to shout over the balcony, "Is there any?" I was mortified. I'm mortified. No, I would have been just turned 16. I wanted to hide under a rock. I was like, "Oh, this is so embarrassing." To that, within the space of I think 12 months, after that, I was in the national program.
Wow.
Within, our development program within British swimming.
Your mom sounds like she's quite the pirate herself.
Well, I think that's probably where I get it. I get a lot of it from if you're going to tell me no, you're going to have to give me a valid reason as to why I can't do it. Because if I can find all the facts to go with it to disprove that, I don't go into that kind of dialogue as much anymore, because it's not always helpful to kind of prove somebody wrong. I'd rather prove myself right nowadays. But I think for those laying those early breadcrumbs, she was a very definitive advocate of me wanting to do sport as a profession. She backed it. You're going to put 100% into this, I'm going to back you 100%. Other family, maybe, why don't you get a real job? And I've had that discussion with my aunt, my mother's sister, even recently, as well. Would you have done your career over? Yes, I'd change a lot of things that I did throughout it, but I wouldn't. If I had the opportunity to jump at it and do it again, all over again, yes, please. It's not even up for a debate. I don't even have to think about it. It's yes, I thoroughly enjoyed the decade I had. I would probably go back and enjoy it a little bit more, and soak up every ounce of the good, the bad, and the different, and breathe it and live in the moment. Whereas I probably didn't do that the first time around, if I'm honest, because my viewpoint on it was, if it was good, okay, that doesn't really matter. That's wonderful. If it's bad, I've got to do it no matter what, because that's my goal. And if it's somewhere in between, I need to suck it up and get on with it. And I've had the opportunity to speak to another young athlete a couple of years ago, and I had to stop him in his tracks, because I was like, yes, I'm talking exactly to myself 20 odd years ago. Do you not think like this? Because it's a regret that I've got, that if somebody would have said to me the exact same thing that I'm going to tell you, as, hey, if it's good, learn something from it. If it's bad and you don't really want to do it, okay, it's going to help that you've got. I had loads of teammates that were very supportive, especially in volleyball. When I didn't feel it, on the door in the morning, 6 o'clock in the morning, let's go, James. And obviously, he's still in the military, but so it's almost like a brotherhood. As you're not feeling it today, we're all a collective. Come on, let's go. And then obviously, if it's a bad day for him, let's go. I used to deliberately leave my phone on the floor, the room opposite, and let it let it ring in the morning to make him get up. He's like, James, why do you do it? Well, if I put it on the floor and it's not easy accessible to me, I've got to get up as well. But if it's noise that's irritating you, you're going to get up as well. So, but I did that more to be awkward. So, but coming back to the aspect with my mother, I say definitely that she wasn't conventional, because that's one of the reasons why she put me in swimming. It was okay if you were to play soccer, football, American football, flag football, basketball. My disability, I know that it's a liability, and I knew that early doors. That hey, I'm not having anybody running circles around me. That I maybe in hindsight, I was, gosh, how old I've been about like second grade, so like 6 or 7 years old. There was 2 kids the year above me, African Americans as well, that were in the swim team. I wish I would have probably been a little bit less shy and a little bit less recluse to kind of go, well, let's tag along and be like the younger brother, because they're going anyway, and then I might enjoy it, and then I would have been 4 or 5 years ahead of where I would have been, and who knows what I might have achieved as a result. So, but I'm not that individual I am nowadays. I'm not scared of putting an idea or a feeler out there of, oh, okay, this is same like I did to come on your show. I'm not scared to literally put a feeler out there. I don't get an answer. Oh, well, move on to the next one, and so on and so on. And if you do get back to me, that's wonderful. If you don't, I've not lost any sleep over it. But I've learned that probably through experiences. Well, it doesn't matter. It's still momentum if I keep going. So that's probably where I am. In terms of answering your question more specific, Karen, of making the Paralympics, probably not in my wildest dreams did I think I would have gone to one, because my mindset towards it 25 years ago wasn't the best, because of the coverage that it was receiving. It was almost like second state citizen. It wasn't getting the considering the word itself means parallel to the Olympics. It obviously did not get the credit or that it deserved, and the work the athletes themselves just do to make it, because they're probably having to work, we'll say, we'll be generous to the Olympics, twice as hard just to get to the starting line, just because of they're having to work over the disability they've got in day out just to do the sport, and then obviously having to live with the disability, with the good and the bad. That once I got into the Paralympic movement, my perception towards it changed like overnight. It was like night and day, as just the way that disabled people talk to each other, that it doesn't bother me anymore, because it's just in passing, and most of it is banter, it's joking around. But obviously some people will take it to heart, and you've got to maybe have a little bit more constraint. But just to see that un-PC nature of it, it kind of went, well, surely you can't say that of somebody. So say, I'll do this because it's so you have some context. Blind people with blinkies. I won't go down the dwarf, because dwarf one's quite bad, but as in from where I'd come from and being in able-bodied sport, it's like, surely you can't say that about somebody else. But just to be able to categorize people in a friendly and jovial way, it's kind of going, okay, long as it's not disrespectful or anything like that. It's just to now that when I go and to my peers within the health and fitness industry, people are like, gosh, James, you got dark humor. It's like, that's tame. For me, that's tame. I'm just saying. So I'll give some people some context of what I said a couple of years ago, because my business coach is retired RAF, so he's very old school in terms of like women and children first. So I went, he'd served the women coaches, so I went, shouldn't the cripple be next? and people didn't know what to say. I went, I'm being serious. So technically I should be the next in line because these are strong male individuals. They should be after me. But people were like, well, that's quite dark. Like, well, for me, that's quite for the coach. He kind of went, oh, that's James just being funny. Others like, they're a bit cringe. It's like, don't know whether to laugh. Is James being serious? It's like, well, I can't take it back because I've said it. So I can't retract a statement. It's been put into the ether. That's how I did it. Did I expect it would to maybe fall on that? It's like, no, but in my mind it was funny. But I think as people, a lot of the coaches know me for a long time, is like, well, okay, James might come out with a statement. Because one coach he struggles with building his calf, so the people are like, well, James, why don't you just poke fun at that because you've got one and it's still bigger than both of it. It's like, I can't do that because I can't keep a straight face. So you can tell I'm joking, but I would poke fun with him occasionally. Oh, have you worked on your calves today? And he wouldn't like it. It's like, well, I can say it because the other one can't grow anything. So it's not. The only way I'm gonna add is through cosmetic stuff. So be it foam, which I've got something upstairs to make the not shorts, a suit trouser leg look a little bit more identical. It's not, but so sometimes I won't wear it because like I don't really care. It's like if somebody would ask me a question as though you look a little bit different, that's like, I got a prosthetic leg. But that's because I've fully embraced the aspect of I'm comfortable with me. I was watching an earlier live today that somebody's gone on live stream because somebody in the general public has come up to him and said, how have you, I can't remember how they phrased it, what's happened to you? And obviously they weren't very happy about it. It's like, I could care less. If you want to come up and stop me in the middle of the street and have a conversation about how it's happened, it's interesting to see that for 50% of the population it bothers them, and I would fall in that camp when I was younger. But now to kind of go, it's like, well, I'm fully embracing of who I am. I did have somebody during the lockdowns did ask how it happened, and they'd had what's the disability? It's a neurological one. And I was like, I'm more in awe of what you're doing. I would go out and have walked regardless if you'd have stopped me anyway. But what you're doing to combat we'll call it an illness or disability that could be debilitating, and you'd be in your bed and it would only go from worse to worse, to I admire what you're doing by riding your bike, that you're willing to take on your disability and not bowing to it. To I respect you, but I'll obviously embrace that you admire me, but I admire you more. So I think from that, I'm willing to, it is humbling in a sense to look at, okay, my life is adverse, but if there's somebody else that maybe in comparison is more adversity, I'll give more credit where it's due, because like what you're doing is more monumental than me walking out and leaving my house just because we're allowed to. Well, at the particular time we were allowed to. I would have done that anyway if there would be nobody there, because it's like I want to do it. But for her to overcome the disability and not let it dictate it to her and let her dictate it on her terms, I thought was more admirable.
I'm curious, how did you make this? It sounds like you started in swimming. How did you make the transition then to rowing and volleyball? Was that something you had already played, or you got into it?
Neither of those two sports I'd ever come across. I was dropped from British swimming. So I was in my first year of my foundation degree, so we'll call it JUCO. So I'd gone to university in 2005, and by the Christmas I was dropped from the program. So I had already seen the writing on the wall, so I knew if I didn't perform, I knew I was gonna be dropped. So I thought to myself, I'm going to come back in the new year and be a regular student. So I didn't know. I was like, well, I don't know what to expect with that because I've never experienced it, because sport's been pretty much a mainstay throughout all my education. It's almost education's paid second fiddle to the sport. What's it going to be like the other way around? So unbeknownst to me, my mother was having a conversation with our performance director at Disability Sport Wales. So if he'd have known earlier, he'd have probably gone, well, okay, James, we've got these sports for you to try out. So rowing was one of them. And there's probably another, I don't know, probably at least 3, 4, 5 other sports on that list that I know nothing about, even probably to this day. So I got a phone call, I think a few days before the semester was going to finish. What's your thoughts about doing rowing? Don't know what to think. Can I have a conversation with my mom and get her take on it? So I've made this the start of my TEDx talk, so people will be shocked. My mom doesn't remember saying exactly what I think. That's how I remember it. As you could be very, very good or absolutely useless. So I ran with it. Like, okay, I'll agree to do the rowing on land to learn the basics, and I was a natural. Oh, now James, we want you to go on the water. No, I didn't sign up to that. I said I'd try it. Considering I spent 8 years in a swimming pool, I was thinking, what happens if I go in the river? I've done it twice after the fact, and then I was a natural at it, and literally Disability Sport Wales and Welsh Rowing threw all the resources behind me because of one person's vision as, hey, James is going to take this sport to the Paralympics. It's quite a heavy burden to carry. I only think about it now, not back then. But those early days, I'd gone from being a development athlete to now I'm a performance athlete. I don't have time to develop. I now have to produce. So that didn't scare me because Disability Sport Wales, considering it's a fairly big organization, the other athletes are like family. So you could ask other athletes who've gone to games before, okay, what's it like? What's it going to take? And tell you, I did this. This is okay. Not saying these are going to work for you, but you almost had this feeling of, and I've talked about it because I'm trying to tap into it again now within coaching for myself, as how were you so good if an element of self-doubt creeped in your head? You were so dismissive of it. If literally this could go wrong. Is that helpful, James? No, gone, and just get on with it. To that naive athlete, as how old would I have been then? About 19, to be not scared of uncertainty, where most people are scared of it. As okay, this ladder I'm climbing up, I don't know what challenges I'm going to face, what difficulties I'm going to face, what challenges, because there's loads of barriers in the way, and there's loads of politics in sport. So for me I was invited, I think in the Feb of the 2006 to go to the national team to try out. I'd literally, I think I was only like 1 or 2 seconds off their time to make the team. That was the first time I was on a rowing machine. They went, oh, I think they said, don't worry about, rowing's got world championships every single year. They said, oh, don't worry about that year. It's like, no, I'm going to these world championships. If it's that close, it's your job to find me a teammate. Obviously, I think my performance director probably liked that kind of thinking, as like, no, it's within touch. I can literally see this thing in the distance. Why are you telling me to focus on a following year? Because that makes that I'm gonna lose motivation, and I'm gonna get discouraged because, like, well, that's now 15 months away, as opposed to I think about 6. I competed in that first world championship. I think fortunate I got to compete at home in the UK for my first ever world championship. That was an experience. So that was a world champs. I didn't get to experience what it would have been like in London as a Paralympics, but I went, gosh, if this is what it's like for world champs, and the one above it is the next step, how do I get there? So literally, I competed so 06, 07, and 09 was my last year in rowing. We're doing world champs, and then the Paralympics of it being its first inclusion in the games, I did the first in every single that sport in that category. So even though I wasn't successful, probably I would have liked, I've still done a first in pretty much everything. And to then go on to volleyball, that was a slight one because I got classified out of my classification. So I retired from rowing because I couldn't compete with the guys who were in the category above him because they were unbeaten for a long time. When I was in the squad, that boat hasn't lost the race in over 10 years now. Wow. So there was like almost no, because they're very, very minimal disability, and I couldn't compete. So I went, well, I'll do the world champs in 09. I'll come back, try and ride out on a white horse. Didn't happen, but oh well, I did my best. I can watch the race back now. I couldn't watch the race back at the time because a lot of things that went wrong on the day, and I went, and we were literally in medal contention. It made me sick to watch. I was like, oh. I knew we were close, but watching on the TV makes it even worse. It's not so. I could help so many people with mindset stuff with that race alone. Now to kind of go, well, in this circumstance, what would you feel like then? What would you feel like after it was race? I was in tears because obviously it was my last race, but I went. We the fastest the boat had ever gone with me in it, so I was like, well, that's nothing to be shown. We went under the world record, but unfortunately, four other crews were faster, so it's no consolation for that. So when volleyball was presented to me in the autumn and the fall of the 2009, I was a little bit less receptive because I was going into my final year of my degree. I was like, well, I was on it for coming out with a 3rd class degree, which is not very good. So I was like, no, I need to focus on my studies, because if I come out with that, I might as well not have tried when I started my degree. So for me, it was like, I need to put my focus and my attention on my academics, which the performance director was okay with. But I kind of did that for about 2 months. I was like, oh, this is boring. I need something else. I need something else alongside. I can't be just going to sleep, eat, rinse and repeat and going to lectures. Is not for me. I just can't do it. I need something that's gonna mentally invigorate me and it's gonna challenge me more physiologically and from an anatomical standpoint. So I did cave, and I was like, oh, I'll try this sitting volleyball. And I'd watched it in the village in 2008 on the TV. I was like, this is easy. Anybody can do this. How was I wrong? I've never been so sore. But I did have I used to go back from time to time to speak with my coach in British swimming, Billy Pye, to catch up and talk over things. And he's like, why do you keep going to all these sit down sports? What, you used to be a little more, as in having like poking a bear, literally. So then, well, I don't know. Technically, I could say swimmers are lazy. You can't see them sweat on reflection, because it's factually true. You wouldn't see somebody, whether you can't see effort. Whereas I think my mum said when she came over for on holiday to come see me at university, she'd never seen me work so hard in a gym on the room. She's like, yeah, you really, really working. It's like, well, I think I brought it up not too long ago when she mentioned. I was like, well, swimming you can't see if I'm working hard, because you wouldn't be able to tell if it's water that's rolling down my head from the swimming pool, or if it's sweat. Whereas rowing, I'm in the air, the elements. Yeah, I'm gonna sweat because my body's trying to keep it cool. But because I enjoyed most everything of rowing, I loved the 4 years that we're in the sport probably more than the other two combined, because it was, I think, because of that element of pretty much you're outdoors most of the time, weather dependent. Obviously, you've been in Canada, Karen, you know that. I think the Canadian team is based in the northwest as well, so they spend more of their time inside in the winter, because they can't train outside because it's too cold and they'll probably be frozen over. But we've got a luxury of being in Europe, that I think it might have, the lake we trained on outside of London, or maybe froze twice in 4 years that I competed. So it's, so you saw the seasons change. You had the cold spells, you had the rain, you had the sunshine, you had pretty much everything in between. So it was nice, it was enjoyable because you were outside. So the transition to sitting volleyball probably wasn't as straightforward, and it wasn't as quick a rise as the other two, because swimming took 12 months, rowing, gosh, maybe 6 months at the most. Volleyball took a lot longer because the coaches had a specific people in mind that I wasn't the top choice in terms of making the team. To when I got my call up, which was the World Champs in 2010, a lot of people couldn't go. So I got a phone call from the team manager and then the head coach, and they went, "Oh, James, do you want this space? Yes. Do you need to think about it? No." Because you've literally given me an opportunity and I'm not going to turn it down. Because for me, I think it's probably predicated on my long lineage of, more so on my mother's side, have like family military history. It means a lot for me to wear that sort of uniform to represent the country, because that's as close as I'm going to get as to military service. I think my family are happy that I haven't gone into the military. But that for me is a great privilege, a great honor to, hey, if you're going to give me it, yes, please, 2 hands. Where do I sign up and when do we go? So I think they were a bit surprised as, do you not need to think over it? No. What do I need to do to cement that place? So that was my first couple of caps. We went away to Hungary before that. As a result, I got selected, and then from that tournament on, I was always in the team. I amassed in the end, I think about 60 caps in just over 2 years. So a lot of the guys have gone on to gone over 100, but for me, everything that was a first, that we went full time. Where do I sign up? Because I'd made the decision in the run up to Beijing with rowing to move to go full time as an athlete, and it worked out. Hey, I've got no responsibilities, I've got no girlfriend, I've got no kids. Yeah, how do I get involved in that? And I'd give it. I said I'd give it a year, because I took a gap year from my postgraduate studies, and the university was okay with that. I was like, I want my place, but can I defer it? Yeah, that was a massive mistake, because I was based in London and studying 200 miles away. So that physically took a lot out of me. I managed to come out with something, but in hindsight, maybe I should have studied a little bit closer to where I was training.
And we'd love to hear how all that you've learned, how you're taking that to work now with others, and to hear about the AIM system that you created.
I've tried to pick it apart, literally piece by piece, to kind of go, okay, what was it that made me successful? Good collective of people. cohorts. Early days, I didn't believe that. I was like, I did it all myself. And I kind of went, well, that's ridiculous now, because that's not true. You've had family support. You've had a performance director that pushed literally all your buttons to. He did it in jest, as sometimes what James is going to turn up, which is, I think now he unfortunately died the back end of last year, that I kind of go almost every day into that as, okay, James, which version of you are going to turn up today? Is how much, if you don't show up, how many people do you let down? I don't like how that sits with my to the core, to that the coaching itself, as trying to make it as simple as possible to give people potentially the fundamentals if they don't have them. As I know you want this cherry on top, but you can't have it unless you've got a good solid foundation. You need to work from the bottom up and go from there. That, okay, I'm fortunate that I can maybe skip hurdles. I can, because I've got good solid foundation. Like if heaven forbid anything went wrong, I go back to basics and I start all again. So the AIM system per se was to give people an objective to go after. So for me, my coaching is built pretty. I'm predicated on why, what, how, why is it that you want to achieve this goal? What's it going to give you? In your mindset, what are you thinking in terms of challenges, obstacles that potentially this is going to trip you up, and in order for you to succeed? So I probably look at any stone unturned, I'll turn it over to kind of go, okay, what's your commitment levels like? 5 out of 10. Tell me why is a 5 out of 10, because that doesn't sound like very committed towards a goal. To almost look at their goals, to rubber stamp it so they've got a clear idea, irrespective if they sign up or not, to kind of go, okay, I've got a game plan because I've spoken to James in terms of, in order for me to get from A to B, I need to do this, and this every single day. So do the consistency factor, repeatable measures. So doing the single things over and over again, you'll get the big apple at the end of it. And I believe the fitness industry and the health industry does a disservice because they mix it up and they murky the waters and they confuse people. But we don't need to do that. As in, the information is out there and it's already overcomplicated. That's why people don't know what to do. It's like, well, do I go with this? Do I go with that? Is that right? Is that wrong? It's like, none of it is wrong. None of it is right. It's whether or not you can implement it and it's going to fit you and your lifestyle. So by doing the AIM system is figuring out what's going to be best suited for that individual. So I probably could look at all my clientele and literally go, well, not one of them are doing the exact same thing. The principles are pretty similar, because I'm going to look at more so what is it that has caused you setbacks in the past? Why do you view uncertainty as potential failure in the future? What are maybe traumatic experiences you faced in the past that's going to present to you how you are right now? To that is behavior, and those are habits. So to give them the impetus and the baby steps to kind of persevere, to kind of go, it's going to take time, especially the mindset stuff. It's going to take a lot of a shift. But I'm more than happy to walk the line with you and hold your hand, because most of this stuff I've done myself. And to give them an aim and an impetus to, hey, this is my goal now, but who's saying 6 months' time it can't be further up? Because I've had the progress that maybe in the past I've fallen foul of. I'll mention one client in particular He had a bad habit of giving up after a couple of days. So I wanted to go, okay, well, what's the difference between your mindset between day 1 and 3 and where it goes pear-shaped on day 4? Because that sounds very, for me, that's a massive red flag. As why aren't you able to push through 4 days? Normally it's a lot longer than that. That you were getting stressed, overwhelmed, that, hey, now I'm going to go back to tried and tested, and I'm going to go what's easy, to literally work through the person's individual circumstances, because they're all going to be different. So, okay, in your own mind, worst case scenario, what could go wrong? Is that really going to happen? I've had one person say, yeah, it will go wrong. And I went, well, 99 out of 100 people, you're the exception. Because I've never spoken to anybody before like that, or since. I went, you can be unique, but I bet you there's somebody else in the world that thinks exactly like that, in terms of that uncertainty. They can't work through it. Because I've obviously showcased on the podcast, I probably was scared, but it didn't frighten me, because it's like, well, ultimately, I use a metaphor that I've used on another podcast about a wall. You've got 4 choices. You can go over it, you can go around it, you can go underneath it. The athlete goes through it, because it's like, I want what's on the other side, so I might as well go through hardship. In terms of that thinking, I don't know how thick that wall is. Don't care. I want what's on the other side. I want the prize on the other side. So the walls, and that could be a person, it could be anything. Hey, I'm coming straight. So if you listen to maybe any retired current athlete, they'll talk like that. It's like proverbial wall. I'm gonna run straight through it. I'm gonna run head first into it, and I'm not fussed, because ultimately the reward or the benefit on the other side outweighs the risk. So that's kind of the thinking I've had since 15, to, hey, I understand there's uncertainty, there's fear, but I'd rather be fearless. And I don't mean without fear. I mean, I'd rather being almost like that lion. I'm going to roar, and I'm going to face this adversity head on. And I did like this. There's a better way of putting it that I saw on social media. What's the difference between a cow and a buffalo? A buffalo runs into a storm, and I didn't know that. And I went, most people are cows, because they go the opposite. Cows run away, but that storm's still going to follow. So why wouldn't you be the buffalo and run into it? And then if you run into the storm's going to pass, and you're going to be in sunnier climates again. So those are 2 analogies that I'm always learning. I'm always seeking to refine it for myself, that I can obviously help people a little bit better and be a little bit more polished. To, if I see, it could be Jordan Peterson, some people don't like him, but in some of the things that he says, like there was one last week I listened to, because he'd gone on a tour. He went, people's DNA is very powerful. If they were to lean into their fears, their adversities, they could actually reach their full potential. I was very excited after just watching that, thinking, oh, it's got a point then, because of what is innately possible if we could tap into our genome code. That is almost a lock key. So if we lean into our fears, so if people are unwilling to face what's difficult, they're doing themselves a disservice. So for me, that was like, wow. I probably need to speak to some sort of geneticist to back it up. But I would be willing to do that, to kind of go, okay, Jordan Peterson says this is this. How accurate is that from a biological standpoint? And if they say yes, people need to do that.
Who do you work with your coaching? Like, who is your clientele?
It'd be the over 30s. So that's I might tweak it because obviously I'm nearly 37, so I might say over 35 because I can relate. Because I've obviously I've had similar life experiences being of that similar age, whereas I think it's because I seem to have people gravitate more in that age group. I don't know how I talk, how I necessarily use it from a talking perspective. I guess the people that are under 30, it's something I say or something that I do, it obviously puts them off that. No,
They're a different breed.
But yeah, it's definitely the over 30s and above. I'd say probably, if I looked at it really under a microscope, it'd probably be 40, 50-year-olds.
Yeah, those under 30, they're they grew up differently. So it's harder to know like what it is that they are into and what draws them in.
Well, that's a generalization a little bit.
They did though, I mean, in a way, because like computers, all of that. Well, I am generalizing, but they did like the under 30, they grew up fully with having those in their life. So it's not a challenge. You just get to know their language. It's a different lingo. It's a different way of being. So yeah.
Well, they don't have attention spans. I know that.
Yeah. So
it's got to be short. And it's like, well, I can't do a video I can't summarize what I have to say in 30 seconds. It's too hard. Or 60 seconds. Otherwise, it's on super speed and I might not get my point across. Or whereas, no, you need to watch a video for, I don't know. I feel like if I use the videos, because our coaches set us all the coaches that he works with to do 31 days of lives every single day for all the month of March, and obviously the weekend is no exceptions. I think my average video is probably no shorter than 10 minutes, but all the information in there is other than one. I managed to, I think it was last week as we were recording, no sound. And one of my clients let me know a message, oh, by the way, I don't know if it's me or if you didn't have any sound, but we couldn't hear what you was. No. So I went to, once I come off, okay, there's no sound at the beginning, there's no sound in the middle. I must have put myself on mute somehow. So I had to do that video all again. So I was like, I apologize to the ones that watched the first one. I didn't do it deliberately, but they're two different videos because it was unscripted. So I went, I'm going to try and get as close as I can to the first one, but I'm not going to be able to do it. So I said to that client in particular, if you know that I'm mute and even if you think it's yours, let me know, and then I can stop. And then I could obviously, okay, we believe that we are muted. So I need to do something about it. But I literally did it again and didn't think anything. Okay, I'll do it again. Whereas if you rewind back maybe a couple of years, that would have irritated me. It's like, oh God, I'll do it again. What a pain in the ass. Whereas I did one, Facebook was playing up on my phone. So I did it twice. And people are like, oh, the first one worked the first time. It's like, well, for me, it didn't. So that's why I'm doing it a second one. I'm going to expand on what I said. And I went, I'm not doing it a third time because that's Facebook's fault, not mine. But in terms of the lives for 30 days, that's consistency to what about halfway now. I haven't done today's yet, but even the days that I don't want to do it, I kind of went, well, James, don't care what you think. You've said to do something you were going to, you're going to do it. And once I've done it, it's all right. It's like, what was the big deal about that? Why didn't you want to do it? But I think a lot of it, when it comes to social media things, it's the rejection component. Is it going to be good enough? It's all these little fears about what you deem another person's gonna, it's like, well, it doesn't matter, because ultimately if they don't like it, they're gonna tune off, or they're not gonna engage with it. So it doesn't really matter. And you're not fully gonna be polished. So I only have to go back to people like, oh, you're amazing with your podcast. I've been doing it 7 years. Go listen to the very beginnings, because I won't go and listen back. It's not, I don't think it's very, very, it's not as good, and I'm not as articulate as I could be now. That I've had guests in the early days have said, oh, why didn't you question me on this or pull me up on that? It's like, well, because I didn't feel like I was the expert on being able to do it. I've had them on like 3 times. So like second or third time, somebody they said, oh, you sounded more like the expert. I was like, that's not fair to the guest. I've got a script in front of me based on their website, what they want to talk about, blah, blah, blah. So all I'm doing is reframing the narrative or the question based on their ideology, what they believe in, and what how they coach, to obviously make it from a third person to first person, or third person to obviously make it wider you. So I went, that's not fair to the other individual, but that's where I've been able to get very, very good at it, that I can do episodes off the cuff, as this is your answer. What's your thoughts on that? But that comes easily, because it's like, okay, I'm not going in with a preconceived idea unless I don't agree with the guest. To kind of go, we don't agree on this, so we're going to talk about this, because people need to have 2 sides of an argument, and then if they make up a third one, that's okay as well. But most of the time, I've even had guests go away and thoughts on even their specific expertise a different way, and they've thanked me for it, as, oh, you've given me a different perspective on this. I'm intrigued. I want to go and delve into that a little bit more, because I've never thought about it before. So that's I think as a conversation, it helps. Obviously, my clientele helps the audience, because I'm willing to go layers deeper as well. Okay, in terms of whatever it is, X, Y, Z, why do you believe that? Da, 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 da. Okay, da, da. And we keep going down the rabbit warren, but then it's helpful for the other person, because I can relay that back to, could be a conversation I've had with a client, could be a conversation I've had with the customer. Oh, based on what you've said to me, I think this episode would be good for you. Okay, or I've not touched upon a certain topic. It keeps coming up. I need to bring it up. So that aspect, for me, that excites me, because I like behavior. I like the human psyche. It makes me tick in terms of, okay, I want to learn. What doesn't matter from whether or not I agree with the person or not. So Jordan Peterson will watch, because he's quite well articulate person, and Andrew Tate is very divisive. But some of the things he's kind of gone, well, yeah, he's right, but maybe he's agitating certain people because he's saying it in a way that people don't like. I don't agree with everything that he said, but some of the stuff is, he's right, that males maybe need to be a little bit less possessive, and be a little bit more, I'm going to tread lightly now so I don't say the wrong word. They need to be maybe a little bit abrasive, but not worried to step on people's toes. But you need to obviously look on that by case as who you're talking to, because there's no point treading on eggshells to suit somebody else's agenda or dialogue. It's like, hey, I'm gonna say it as it is. If it annoys you, so I've got very good at it, to pick up on people's body language, behavior, as, oh, okay, what I'm saying is making you uneasy. Okay, I'll change my narrative, because I don't want to fracas the relationship just because we don't agree on some ideology. But that's a skill to be able to, especially here, because that's very difficult, because I can't pick up on what people are doing with the hands, what they're doing with the feet, what you can do in person, because you could pick up on negative traits very easily, because people give off that before they do their thinking. So for me to be able to help clientele with that is immensely pleasurable, because to see the evolution in somebody else is like, gosh, you've changed night and day. And for them to give back compliments from other people as well, because a client's review call yesterday, and when they come to the end of it's like, oh, the other person, oh, I've never seen you smile so much. You used to be, you didn't smile. That's amazing, because like I've changed your whole ecosystem of belief of you are self-confident, you're going to smile because you're happy. So that gives me a great amount of pleasure and pride, more so than probably my athletic career. Some people might believe that, some people might not, but that for me, I think, because I've become more empathetic myself, to kind of embrace others' frailties and things like that. So if I can rebuild that person's self-esteem, self-confidence in themselves, hey, they're going to be self-aware to be able to catch when they fall into some of these traps of maybe talking negative about themselves, negative with their thoughts, to because obviously they would challenge it if somebody else was talking bad about them, because like, well, hey, I'm so confident about myself, you're not going to talk to me like that. And then they've got their self-awareness to then go, okay, from time to time it's going to happen that you're going to maybe question yourself as, well, why didn't I do that right the first time? Why don't I do it loads? I did it last night in practice, to kind of go, well, James, that's not really helpful if you're cursing at yourself. You're not deliberately missing things. As just keep going. To I get praised by other teammates, and I was like, why are you able to almost shut out negative comments that are coming from the bench? Because it's not helpful. Most of that information is useless. It's not information I don't already know. So that's, it's almost like white. It's like, well, how do you do it? It's like, because I'm able to decipher in my head, well, that comment's not useful. In like the other, if it's obviously a comment that's at me and I'm not doing it, I'll take it on board. But it's maybe taking a little bit more to reflect after the fact and go away and kind of go, yeah, the coach is right. My emotions are high, and thus you single him out. But yeah, I'm not doing this. So thus, when the next game come around, all he's doing is asking you to do a basic thing. So I'm able, as a result, to kind of decipher information that I do in my own life or through past experience, to filter into other people's, to kind of go, are you open to looking into it? If you're not, hey, that's completely acceptable, because there may be some things that you don't want to unearth or open the Pandora's box to kind of see what's inside it, which is completely fine, because some of those things may be very difficult, because you've been taught to believe, I think definitely from a male perspective, there's stigma. You can't talk about problems. You've got to proverbially use the British one of the step up, you got to get on with it. It's like, well, if you internalize all these problems, it's not helpful for you. And somebody shared a good one today, as people around the bedside of somebody with their physical injury, but there's nowhere to be seen when somebody's going through mental hardship, which is so true. It's like, well, maybe if people were maybe less skeptical of how people are going to treat them if they're open, it's becoming far easier because it's being talked about a bit more. But then if we normalize it, that it's, I don't want to use the slogan, it's okay not to be okay, because if we can work through it, you will be okay again. That you're okay with being open to, this is a problem that you feel, you think at this present moment. Who's to say? Ultimately, the old saying is that there's light at the end of the tunnel. It's just perspective in terms of, if you looked at a bottle for one way, it would be fairly open, and if you looked at it the other way, it'd be fairly closed. But there's still light at the end of it. It's just whether or not you're willing to see that there is light at the end of the tunnel. Because if people are going through mental health, going through anxiety and depression, they're not uniquely alone. There's probably thousands of people going through that same ordeal at this present moment in time as well. And if you're able to take the blinkers off and having that open-minded approach, I think it's a lot easier to be open to either seeking out help or being kind of going, okay, I've got a problem. Who can I share that with? I've got no problems with sharing that with I did have a time in my life, especially through sport, that you wore a suit of armor and any weakness is a liability, that I've kind of gone, well, you need to work through that, because as a child, you were okay with every emotion under the sun. And that's probably because my mother, my aunt, and my grandmother helped to me growing up, that I was more in a matriarchal society. Thus, I'm going to be maybe atypical of a male to be maybe open with my feelings.
So how can our listeners go find out more about you and work with you if they're looking for that?
Probably the easiest way, probably go to my website. So my website is jamesowenroberts.com. And at the bottom of the first page, there is a discovery call option. So to have a 30-minute chat, no pressure whatsoever. Even if you wanted to come learn about it, as in, how does that help you as an individual? There's that. Obviously, there's the about me section of what I do, and then being myself in terms of like my journey through adversity and things like that. But that's probably the easiest way to do it, is to go through the website and then not try and book a call, as in use that option to book a call. If you can't find a time that's suitable for you, obviously let me know by email, because I know with time differences around the world, that my schedule might not be convenient for some people. Just let me know, and I can obviously free up some time in my schedule where possible to make it more suiting of you as a listener, to be able to go, worst case scenario, you email me and we go back and forth, and I'll ask you, what free dates and times can you do in your diary, and then I can see if I can do them. And worst case scenario, I could free up some time on the weekend if it's not there, and do it from that. So that probably the best protocol is to start with the website.
Okay, awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on here and chatting with us and sharing all of your story with us. It's been great chatting with you.
Yeah.
It's been my absolute pleasure.